So, Jai Baba, everybody. Let's get started. Um, Kama, you wanted to give an assignment. You want to give that first? No, let's just do the how to love God reading first, and then get to the assignment. Who all are there? Okay. That- that's it.
Yeah, David, are you able to say?
Yeah, or I request you to mute.
Okay. So, last reading,
So
we
let's
had.
read the message first, Kama, and then you can give the assignment. That be fine?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No, I will read the message, the How to Love God message first,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah, right. Yes, correct, please.
okay, thank you. Jai Baba, Jai Baba, how to love God. To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. If instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. If instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. If we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. If we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and find Him as our own self. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. So, as I was mentioning a few minutes back, Karma has thought of an assignment based largely on the last part of meditation. So, he probably will write it up and also send it out on Telegram. But this is a good time to first talk about it. Come over to you.
Okay, Jay Baba. I think last weekend we were reading the last part of Types of Meditation, part 8. So, hopefully, if you can just jot down these points, if you have a piece of paper or you can listen to the recording, page number 250 to 251, which is the Types of Meditation, part 8, when we were talking about Sahaja Samadhi. In these two pages, you will notice that there is a definition for Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Nirvana, and Sahaja Samadhi. What we call as absorption in divinity, Nirvana, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, divinity in expression, and Sahaja Samadhi, divinity in action. I would also request you to refer to the chart, page 278 in God Speaks, where the different categorizations of the 56 God realized souls, Madzubs, Paramahamsa, Jivan Mukta, and Sadguru. And you will notice that Madzu and Paramahamsa comes under Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now you have to ponder on it to understand why this is there and why Jivan Mukta and Sadguru are coming under the category of Sahaja Samadhi. That is number one question. Number two is, if you remember, Ravi and we had discussed about Nirvana, where I had, I had incorrectly thought that Nirvana, which is the divine absolute vacuum state, the first stage of Fana, and not the second stage of real Fana, which is Fana Phila or Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, by definition, is God realization, self realization. It is the second stage of real fana. But all souls have to reach liberation or nirvana, which is before death, and moksha, liberation after death. Now, the question here is that in God Speaks supplement, Baba says moksha, people who have moksha, which is after death, liberation, they enjoy the bliss state, which is part of the Sachitananda, you know, the infinite bliss state. But they don't experience knowledge or power because that is only in the second stage, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So the second question out here is Nirvana is called absorption in divinity. And then you have divinity in expression, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and divinity in action. Now you want to ponder on the word, what is divinity? That is another assignment. What is divinity and what is reality? Okay. So these two things, divinity and reality, first you have to know the definition. And then you have to ponder on the fact, why is nirvana called absorption in divinity? I personally felt that, if divinity is Satchitananda, infinite knowledge, power, and bliss, that is self realization, God realization state, why is it defined nirvana as absorption in divinity? I look at it more as absorption in the divine absolute vacuum state, right? Because in page 125, where you will read about the seventh plane, which says that the passing away in the absolute vacuum of the original state of God is called attaining the fana of the seventh plane of consciousness, what you call as final fana. And also as a subnote, fana and baka in different degrees are experienced by ordinary people in the phenomenal gross plane of existence, what we call as zeroth plane. Fana and baka is also experienced by people in the involution state between 1 and 6. But the real fana or final fana of the seventh plane is what is nirvana, the first stage of real fana. So you have to read from page 125 and also use the index in the back, or even do a control F find and read about nirvana, nirvikalpa samadhi, and sahaja samadhi from God Speaks too. It's a little bit confusing the way it's been described in discourses and God Speaks. Because another thing you will notice is that only in discourses, Baba describes these words like absorption in divinity, divinity in expression, divinity in action, but not in God Speaks. God Speaks, he goes much more in detail about what is nirvana and nirvikalpa samadhi and sahaja samadhi. So that is the basic, what I call as next weekend. If you have time during this week, have a look at it because we don't want to waste time commenting on it from my side. I wanted you guys to have a look at it. Maybe you'll give me some insights. The only hint I can tell you is that this absorption in divinity, that word bothers me. I am looking more at it as a divine absolute vacuum state, or even moksha is absorption in bliss. Whereas Nirvikalpa Samadhi is divinity in expression, which is fine. And because the people in Nirvikalpa Samadhi are not directly dealing with the public, whereas Sahaja Samadhi, divinity in action, is directly dealing with the public. So there is a discrepancy out here between the Jivan Mukta and the Sadguru, you know. So I will leave these thoughts here, and then if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Jai Baba.
Jay Baba, I just want to bring to your attention, Karthik, that you had sent us the readings of God Speaks, which is supposed to be about 22 of them. But number 16, G16 is missing, and G16 largely deals with page number 129 to 137. And that covers in a big way Fana, Phila, and Baka Bila. So in case it is there, can you please post it for us?
If I remember right, if I remember right, Soma, I think that was one of the things that we failed to record. So apologies on that.
Okay.
I think that's the only reason why we missed uh, uh, posting that. So yeah. So you've been going back on the. This is the the last year's God Speaks reading, correct?
Exactly. And since I was not
Yeah, yeah.
there, I was going through the
I missed one
recordings.
file. Yes, I missed one recording. That's for sure. But let me check again if that's the one I'm talking about, or is there another
Yeah.
missed
And
one?
that's exactly what I think now Kama spoke to
Kama
us
brought up.
about.
Yes, yes,
Exactly.
yes, yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Come on, let me.
I would also like to,
Rather,
one last, sorry,
apologies.
one final thing is if somebody could tabulate in a tabular form, look at moksha, nirvana, nirvikalpa samadhi, and sahaja samadhi, collate all the information from both discourses and God speaks, I think it will be very useful. Deva.
Yeah. Come, I'll be happy to volunteer for that because I have already created for some other group a small presentation. I'll be happy to do that. One comment I want to make on your question is nirvana. When somebody gets nirvana, why do they go into vacuum state? Is that your question, Kama?
No. I think that previously in our debate, where I had mistakenly thought that nirvana was absorption in bliss, which is not, because bliss state is for people in moksha, which is after death, whereas nirvana is before you drop the gross body, and it is the first state of final fana. And everybody who experiences nirvikalpa samadhi after that has to go through the nirvana state, which I understand from God Speaks is the divine absolute vacuum state. And also, we had discussed that nirvana is that state where the word apparently, very important word, God is not. This is the only state where God is not and consciousness is.
Yeah.
This experience of the first stage of Vana is what Buddha emphasized, but later on it was misinterpreted as Buddha having emphasized that there was no God. The reality, however, is that God is.
Hang on one
Okay,
second, if you don't
so
mind.
let me finish my question. Let me
Yeah.
finish. Let me finish.
Can you just? I'm just trying to understand your. You just stated something just before. Would it be possible for you to trace back what you said just now? I'm having little problem in
Which part?
understanding you. Yeah. Just before this, uh, you said you had some difficulty in understanding. You said
No.
some sentence. Yeah.
Yes, the
Sorry
difficulty
for
was.
obstructing you, but
No problem.
yeah.
I was saying the use of the semantic word divinity, absorption in divinity, which is defined as for the nirvana state or absorption in divinity, page number 250, the first paragraph. That definition of absorption in divinity, whereas nirvana evolution on God Speaks, page number 127, speaks about the divine absolute vacuum state. So I was trying to figure out how to interpret this.
Okay. Let me say, maybe I'm repeating the same thing, and I feel maybe I'm not as well read as you. Okay. Within my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. Okay. Mukti. We all understand what is mukti, right? The person with the sanskaras, he leaves the body. The soul separates from the body. And the soul hovers around the body for 3 to 5 days. After 3 to 5, not after, during that period of time between the 3 to 5 days, he attains the mukti. How does he attain the mukti? I'm sure it is the involvement of perfect master, wiping away all the sanskaras, and that makes him jump into the divine world and mukti. That's it. He becomes one with the, he experiences infinite bliss. Even though he has power and knowledge, there is no way he cannot experience because he doesn't have a body. That is the mukti. We all understand that, right? Second point, the other three categories, what Baba explained, happens when the person is alive, when the person has gross body. And the game is totally different game when the person has a body versus person has no body. So all the details what Baba is talking about, fana, phila, baka, bila, all that happens only when the person has physical body. They go through that experiences of fana, later on phila, fana, phila. Still, they experience God, but still not perfect. Again, probably they take some more time to experience baka bila, then they'll establish the perfectness of a perfect master, being perfect. God realized perfect man only after experiencing baka bila, and they stay in this body depends upon the prarabdha. That's what Baba used. Prarabdha means the past. That's very difficult for me to understand, but I just took it for granted. So based on the prarabdha, they may be alive in the gross body 3 to 5 days or for many, many years. And then finally, the moment comes, they leave the body and become one with the beyond state of God. See, that is what I understand from reading God Speaks, Discourses, and some other books I'm talking about. I don't know whether I answered you or whether I said the same thing what you know. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, I think you were talking about moksha after death, that I understand. I think you have not pointed out about nirvana and moksha.
No, here. I pointed out nirvana only when they are in the body, okay, not after death. Only the first category of mukta I talked about when the person leaves the body. Rest of all the other categories Baba talked about in God Speaks is when the person is in the body, physical body, gross body.
Okay, so coming back to the page number 278 table of the 56 God realized souls, where you were talking about Baka Bila, Fanafila, and so on. The question here is, are all those four categories of people, Madzubs, Paramahamsas, Jivan Muktas, and Sadgurus, are they all having the same God consciousness state?
Yes, God realization state only after passing through Baka Bila state. There is a journey between Fana and Fanafila and Baka Bila. Fana and Baka. There is that is called Turiya Avastha, divine junction. They all go through that divine junction, anywhere from 3 days to depends upon, I don't know what it is. Even perfect masters also have to go through that. And let us say out of 5 perfect master, if one is done with his job, with his duties, he doesn't retain the body even single minute. He drops the body. And then there are 56 other people who are in line. The other person, whoever is designated, he steps into the perfect master who has been experiencing Bakabila. That is established as a God realized person. Jivan Mukta.
Okay.
Jivan Mukta, probably I'm thinking. Jivan Mukta. Not Paramahamsa, not Mazub. Because I also happen to read, it's very interesting, I came to know, for perfect master to elevate a sixth pain person to Mazub is very easy, it seems. They don't even do anything. But whereas the perfect master has to spend time and energy if they want to bring a person from the sixth plane to the Jivan Mukta state. I thought that's very interesting. But again, that depends upon the prarabdha.
Now, are you saying that you can go from the sixth plane directly to the Jivan Mukta state?
Yeah, they have to pass through Fanafila, Bakabila. Yeah, they have to pass through those states, not directly, but they have to pass through Fanafila, Bakabila.
And what is the difference between Fanafila and Bakabila?
The difference is in Fanafila, they just experience God, but they are not perfect.
Okay.
In only after experiencing Bakabila, then they become perfect. See, for example, Meher Baba, with the Vignani Sanskaras, he led a very normal life. As a boy, played cricket and all those things, everything. And then in PUC, when he was doing PUC, when Babajan kissed, then he was in he is in a different state. For 2 years, he had to go through struggle because he was not able to come down to this, the world of duality. He's not able to connect the duality. He is in that God state. So after 2 years, in 1913, he was kissed. And 1915 or so, he had to meet Upasni Maharaj, and he had to stay like 6 or 7 years with him, who brought him back into uh, this worldly state. Now he's both conscious of divinity as well as this world. All these people have to go through this state when they're in the body, because it's very difficult to experience that God state and at the same time the world of duality. It's not easy. Even Avatar had to spend 6 to 7 years by the help of a guru, that is Upasni Maharaj, who gives the yoga sanskaras uh, to Avatar, to bring him down to the physical world, our world. See, that's how even the 56 God realizer soul, they have their own, depends upon their prarabdha. They have to go through different time periods, our time periods, because God state doesn't have any time. In our time sense, they have to go through this, the Turiya Avastha, that is divine junction between the Fana state and the Bakabila state to become perfect. I thought that was very interesting.
So you're saying
So
that
I think, Kama, here's a suggestion. Given that this is an assignment and given that you already have a volunteer, I suggest that we continue reading and create a workshop style session where Ravi can probably present his findings. So can the others who have dwelled on this and researched it, next weekend. And then we continue the discussion. Do you think that's a better way of taking it?
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion, Karthik. But here's the ball is rolling in Kama.
I know. I can
Please
see.
let it roll. And this is very important. We are in this period of avataric period, and this is where we evolve. We are all evolving in this, and this is a very, very important topic, in my opinion. With all my humility, I would say. But Kama, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Kama's ball is not rolling; it's spinning. Kama, go ahead. You want to say something?
Intellectual genius, Kama.
No. I think that it's actually what you're saying is this really needs the input of not just you and I, because I would like others to also read it because they might come up with some insights. And thanks to you, I was under the impression that nirvana and moksha states, the soul, has the same kind of experience, which I thought was absorption in bliss, which isn't. One is divine absolute vacuum state in nirvana, and moksha is the only the bliss aspect, which you corrected me. So I think I'm very grateful for that. But what I'm trying to say is that while reading discourses and God speaks at different time periods, it became very confusing for a
Yeah.
newcomer, especially even for me, when I saw these definitions of nirvana, absorption in divinity, and these things are not mentioned in God Speaks. And we all understand that God Speaks is the primary reference from which, whether you read Infinite Intelligence, whether you read other literature of Baba, the reference point, we have to always go back to God Speaks, and of course Beams, which is a beautiful appendage to God Speaks. So I think I will go with what Karthik said, that next weekend, hopefully you will have everything collated and we can share that, and others would also read. Especially, like I said, the easiest way for you to do is to do the control F on both discourses and God Speaks, and look at all the moksha, nirvana, nirvikalpa samadhi, and sahaja samadhi definitions, and try to come up with something interesting that we can debate about. Jai Baba.
Only addition to that technique that I have is, do you want to suggest any other books between you and Ravi which cover this topic, or some of these keywords covered by Baba, right? So
You know
obviously
what
we
I would
can do
suggest,
DAGs.
Karthik? You know
Yeah,
what I would
yeah, go
suggest,
ahead.
Karthik? Throw
Yeah,
away
Ravi.
all the books. Throw away God Speaks. Throw away discourses. Keep your mind on Baba. Keep loving him. Because, sorry, sorry, I'm a crazy guy. I'm much crazier than Kama. Okay? But I'm stupid, whereas Kama is very intelligent. Because no matter how much we read these books, it's only information transformation. Okay? Information transformation doesn't do anything good. That has to be synced in our system. Okay? Unless we prepare our system, that information won't be sunk. How do we make ourselves prepared? Only way is to leave the intellect aside and make it loving. Love is the only way to sink the knowledge. That's what Baba said. And please, Kama, don't put me in any, don't praise or anything. We all read God Speaks, okay? The information is there in God Speaks. I'm just bringing up whatever is there in the God Speaks. That's all I'm doing. Please
Jai
don't
Baba.
think I'm smart or anything. It's Baba who is helping us to creating this debate. It is the Baba who is
Jai
creating.
Baba. Jai Baba, can I say something? Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to join the queue of stupid people. I think I top them all. I agree, I'm also stupid. These words I don't understand. I think I'm stupid or I'm dyslexic or whatever. But the thing is, like Raviji said, love is the only thing. That's my experience. You see, if I tell you the hierarchy in an office is manager, deputy manager, above manager, small manager, then you go all the way to CEO. If I know this knowledge, will I become a CEO? No. This knowledge is good to keep a goal in mind. The only way I can get to the CEO's position is through my work, or through being different, or doing what I need to do. So, in my understanding, because I operate from heart, is I don't have any understanding. The only thing is bhava that comes, that love that oozes in Baba's name. So, whether it's baka, bila, pana, pila, my apologies. If I know these words and I know that remembering them will get me closer to Baba, I will memorize them with all my heart. But my intuition doesn't agree. My intuition, and I'm at the best bliss state when I submit, when I'm in his, I just think about his attributes and these things. How do I incorporate them in my life? that is when there is a spark. That's when there is a change. That's when humble. And then I realized a layer of dirt has gone off my sanskaras. Uh, so yeah, basically, I just wanted to share that I feel very stupid because I don't remember these things, but I feel at peace when I submit to Baba with all my good, bad, or ugly, and I feel under his umbrella all the time. This is my experience, Jai Baba. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'll just comment on your analogy. So if you want to get to be the CEO, you at least need to know the hierarchy, right? I know
Yes,
just by aspiring for it in your heart, in the world of spirituality and in the Baba's way of carrying us veiled, he can take care of it. But I think the objective of this group is also to try to see how we can get some more context and some more understanding through reading. So though we we can do it without it,
yeah.
let's focus on that aspect as
Yeah,
well.
that's true. And I think I'm going to go veiled. Rest of you can memorize this.
Yeah, sure. So each one to
Each
their
one to
own.
his own. Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. But then our focus is to also make sure that those who are interested in the reading and interested in trying to make sense of this, as Kama puts it, as this game, because Baba has, put out so much information out
yeah,
there which was never there,
yeah,
but also in it there are these little mysteries, little
yeah.
secrets, little differences which makes
True.
us think and add them all together to make sense. And
Yeah,
what
that's
better
the
way
reason.
than
That's the reason I perhaps we are sticking around because these are Baba's words.
yes,
It must make sense.
absolutely.
It must be
So and
larger
then
than what we understand, and you don't want to lose
and I
one
think
janam by not being there. So that's why we present ourselves. But
true,
absorption is a little poorer than people who lead with intellect.
true, absolutely. And the other thing is, I think groupthink works, right? At least it's works for me. And the fact that we've sustained this group
Yeah,
for 10 of us means it's
yeah,
working for some more, where we are able to understand and question each other, and in the process,
yeah.
make our journey a little more easier. So
Yeah, when we
I think,
came, we were uncut diamonds. Now we are getting cut and polished. So yeah, we are improving.
indeed, yes. Okay, Jay
Jai
Baba,
Baba, Jai Baba.
let's
Yeah.
Get
start
reading.
reading.
I'm
Yeah.
so grateful to this group. When if I know something in discourses and God speaks, I completely, well, Baba, of course, Baba, but Baba gave me this group, and through this group only I was able to absorb something from God speaks and discourses. So Jay Baba for the Baba to arrange this group. He's
Jai Baba,
present.
indeed. Me
He is
too.
present. He
Me
is
too.
present with us. I feel the presence, Baba's
E-
presence.
Every weekend, yes, indeed.
Yes, 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 yes.
Jai
I
Baba.
just
Yep.
need a half a minute. I just want to say, the intention of this assignment and also all our deliberations and this meeting should ultimately be how to make God speak simpler for others, uh, if possible, because we are on the journey. It's like, if I can take an analogy of climbing the Himalayan mountains. If you find some, uh, you know, some milestone, you put an indication. So we can also put some milestones as based on our understanding, so that it becomes easier for us to as well as others to understand. Would that be? I mean, could be the goal, and
Brilliant.
that can inspire us to at least contribute whatever we understand.
Brilliant. So using the digital tools, we are leaving milestone markers and evidences for others apart from ourselves. It's a brilliant analogy, and I think we will leave these tools and assets and whatever work products that we have created to help others in the journey and ourselves. And yes, that's what we're doing. Good analogy.
Jay Baba.
Jai Baba, if I just want to add to what Nomita and Ravi were talking about, I think that, I've repeated this, I'm going to repeat this again because it's something that needs to be ingrained in each one of us. In the supplement Practical Mysticism, which has already been quoted, which says approach to truth is individual. There is no general rule or method applicable to all who aspire to realize God. Every man must work out his own salvation and must choose his own method, although his choice is mostly determined by the total effect of the mind impressions or sanskaras acquired in previous lives. He should be guided by the creed of his conscience and follow the method that best suits his spiritual tendency, his physical aptitude, and his external circumstances. Truth is one, but the approach to it is essentially individual. So, my insight till date is very simple. I think I've had a discussion with Namita also. Whenever we are looking at Baba, it's the embodied form of God who is the most current avatar of the Baba operating system. Number two, the challenge I felt was whenever I look at Baba just in the embodied human form, and if I don't reinforce that behind Baba is the formless self, our innermost loving self, then we are always separating ourselves from the individual drop soul. Of course, we have that ego that is preventing us from being united with our own self. This is the whole divine game. It is easy to say, Baba said, love me. And Baba mentioned love me is for the 80% of the population who are not interested in the metaphysics of the divine game. I believe we are in the 20% who are interested in understanding the metaphysics. We are living in an information era. Baba took the trouble to dictate all this. We have to be practical. And number three is basically that, as we go on reading the next two chapters, Baba talks about Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. I'm also quoting Ramana Maharshi. He said there are two ways. One is Bhakti Yoga, complete surrender, provisional working ego. You don't have to worry about all the semantics and Nirguna Nirakar, all those things. No need. You just surrender completely and love Baba. And we have to understand what do we mean by loving Baba. Everybody keeps saying, love Baba. Love Baba is about relationships, which we know that. So I won't go into that. But I'm trying to point out the fact is that people who are interested in understanding the metaphysics of it, why this whole divine game? Because you are the self. As long as we just only focus on the form, we will be stuck. And the second thing is, Baba said, I have given spiritual atoms of energy to every word in discourses and God speaks. It is going to be difficult in the beginning, but keep reading and one day the key will turn. And I also will emphasize the fact that pure love is the gift of the perfect master. Once you have that, you don't need this. I'm in the category, I have the 7 deadly sins. So I need this as a kind of a scaffolding for myself. Love is like oxygen. We don't talk about breathing oxygen. The fact that we are with Baba, that we are reading this, we are already in love. I don't have to claim, hey, I'm in love with Baba. That's immaterial. The question here is we are all trying to relate the subject matter with our day-to-day life, the practical material life and the spiritual life, the balancing of mind and heart. And coming back to the gender aspect, I understand Namita's aspect. Baba said women excel in the qualities of the heart, men excel in the qualities of the mind and will. So we will be approaching this, but balancing of mind and heart is equally important, whether you're a male or a female. For the woman, it comes from the heart first. From the man, it comes from the mind. So I think that the important thing we have to understand this reading is important for people who would like to blend both Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga together. It is obvious, it's ubiquitous that without love, you can't do this. It's as simple as that. But once you have pure love, all these things don't matter. Yes, knowledge is the opposite of ignorance, and it's only in the waking state, you know. Jai Baba.
I think that was good form you showed. Did you make those five things up, or it was just it was something that you're thought through? The percentages and stuff. All of that was absolutely relevant, and I think it relates to
No,
what we are doing.
Baba helped me to, Baba just helped me to say this, you know. I think I have, you know, I have to use the provisional working ego, you know.
You slayed it, man.
What else is
Baba
there?
slayed it. Baba slayed it. Yeah, so good. I think that was a good summary of why we are in MBA. So let's get on with what we're supposed to do. Get on with it. So after the jumps and starts, page 252 on the Discourses physical book. The chapter is Dynamics of Spiritual Advancement. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Karthik, this is a very important chapter. Let us go a little slowly, okay, so that we can absorb.
Sure. Stop me even. I mean, I think I always pause after a paragraph, but feel free to stop me between lines as well if you want to discuss something. No issues. Okay. So first subtitle here is Subjugation of Body for Higher Life. Spiritual advancement begins when there is a radical change in the outlook of the worldly person. The worldly individual lives mostly for the body, and even in those pursuits that do not seem to have a direct reference to the body, in the last analysis, the ultimate motive power is to be found in the desires connected with the body. For example, he lives to eat, he does not eat to live. He has not yet discovered any purpose clearly transcending the body, so the body and its comforts become the center of all his pursuits. But when he discovers values in which the soul is predominant, the body is at once relegated to the background. The maintenance of the body then becomes for him merely instrumental for the realization of a higher purpose. His body, which had formerly been a hindrance to true spiritual life, becomes an instrument for the release of higher life. At this stage, the person attends to his bodily needs with no special feeling of self identification, like the driver of a car who fills it with fuel and water so that it may be kept going. It's a good analogy. Quest for the goal, the, the very beginning of spiritual advancement is conditioned by the quest of that goal for which man lives, the goal for which he unconsciously loves and hates, and for which he goes through variegated joys and sufferings. Though he may be stirred by the pull of this incomprehensible and irresistible divine destiny, it may take a long time before he arrives at the mountain top of truth realization, and the path is constantly strewn with pitfalls and slippery precipices. Those who attempt to reach this mountain top have to climb higher and higher. And even if a person has succeeded in scaling great heights, the slightest mistake on his part might cast him down to the very beginning again. Therefore, the aspirant is never safe unless he has the advantage of the help and guidance of a perfect master who knows the ins and outs of the spiritual path and who can not only safeguard the aspirant from a possible fall but lead him to the goal of realization without unnecessary relapses. Obstacles to advancement. The aspirant who attempts to reach the goal carries with him all the sanskaras he has accumulated in the past. But in the intensity of his spiritual longing, they remain suspended and ineffective for the time being. Time and again, however, when there is a slackening of spiritual effort, the sanskaras hitherto suspended from action gather fresh strength and arraying themselves in a new formation constitute formidable obstacles in the spiritual advancement of the aspirant. This analogy of a river. This might be illustrated by the analogy of a river. The powerful current of a river carries with it great quantities of silt from the source and the banks. As long as these quantities are suspended in water, they do not hinder the flow of the river, though they may slow it down. When the current becomes slower in the plains, and particularly toward the mouth, this bulk tends to deposit in the riverbed and to form huge islands or deltas. These not only obstruct the current, but often divert it or even split it into smaller streams and on the whole weaken the force of the mighty river. Again, when the river is in flood, it sweeps away all obstacles of trees, bushes, and rubbish in its path. But when these accumulate to a certain degree, they can constitute a serious hindrance to the flow of the river. In the same way, the path of spiritual advancement is often blocked by the obstacles of its own creation, and these can be removed only through the help of the Master. Okay? Egoism must disappear. The help of the Master is most effective when the aspirant surrenders his ego life in favor of the unlimited life that the Master represents. Complete self surrender is the most difficult to achieve, and yet the most essential condition of spiritual advancement is the decreasing of egoism to its minimum. The objective of spiritual advancement is not so much works, but the quality of life free from ego consciousness. If the aspirant has many great things to his credit that he has claimed as his ego fastens itself upon the achievements, and this constitutes a formidable hindrance to life unlimited. Hence comes the futility of rituals and ceremonies, acts of charity and good works, external renunciation and penances when rooted in ego consciousness.
I just wanted to point
Let's
out.
stop here. Let's stop here. Yeah.
So,
Okay?
this analogy of charities and all. So basically, it's again a reminder that whatever we do, we should not have any sense of achievement and do it selfless service. Would that be the right, I mean, interpretation? Because then, whenever whatever good we do, whether it is for religion or for community, we do it without any uh, sense of achievement that I've got a medal or this that. I mean, just do it without any uh, sense of ego or sense of achievement. That is one. And second is that in the earlier part, when they're talking about the climbing the mountain, so uh, basically it relates that we are all caught up in our worldly sanskaras, our impressions, but the air at the top. I mean, when I mean with the air, the spiritual divine air is free from all that, and it's the most fresh and pure. Jai Baba.
Great.
How does the ego come in the way?
I'm talking about the when you do some charity. There's mention about charity and doing something for community. Once again, I don't know.
Yeah.
So when we do all that, we should not have any sense of achievement. And this rituals and ceremonies and acts of charity. One second. Then just go a little below. See this line which says, hence comes the futility of rituals and ceremonies, acts of charity and good works, external renunciation and penances, when rooted in ego consciousness. I think this is very, very important whenever we are doing anything, we are doing it for good. It may be helping somebody in COVID, it may be anything else which we do or for the benefit of others. We should have no ego coming in, or we should not have any sense of achievement in this. Do it selflessly. Would that be the right way to interpret this? Okay, Baba.
I
We
think it
do
is the right
charity.
way to.
We do charity, and let's say I robbed too. I robbed a bank, and I took that money and helped some poor children um, somewhere who are not able to eat. So I gave that money to the what is that called guy? Robin Hood? Not Robin Hood. The guy who steals and gives the poor.
Yeah, that's Robin Hood. Yes.
Robin Hood. So let's say I do that. So what is the problem in that, spiritually speaking? I Same problem. Only thing is, in one action I create gold chain, in the other action I create a iron chain, right? By stealing money, I'm creating bad sanskaras because it's the easy way. Without working hard, I'm stealing it. And I'm using it for a good work, but I'm also creating a gold chain. As long as I am doing this, anything, whether you're doing burglary uh, or charity, as long as we have that I consciousness is strong, we create the sanskaras. And that is binding. That becomes binding. That's the problem. As long as we don't create sanskaras, as long as we feel it is the Baba who is doing this. Not that we rob the bank saying Baba. Baba never tells us to rob a bank. Baba wants us to work hard in a simple way. And whatever we have, simple extra thing, we can do just charity. Baba, in a situation, Baba talks different things in different ways for different people. But in one situation, I remember, don't even bother to do charity. That's what he said. And I was wondering, why is he saying that? Because it's not an easy thing. You also pick up some ego with that by doing charity. That's the problem. That's the bigger problem. I'm doing the charity. That's the problem. So that's what is involved with the ego. But the ego is the one which comes in the way if we improperly use our ego. The ego has to be used. We have to know how to use the ego. Proper ego. I think that's what we are going to get into this chapter. But those are my comments. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, are we talking about the mind or are we talking about the ego? That is one question. Number two is everything is contextual based on the principles of violence that we have read in discourses. Number three is from selfishness to selflessness, both are in the category of duality, what you call as iron chains and golden chains. And there was one example given in Beams, I believe, where Baba was talking about how a mother who needs to feed the child because she needs to, she's asking this neighbor, can you give me some milk, merchant? But he refuses. So she has to steal the milk to feed the baby. So here, when you just look at the aspect of stealing, then definitely it will look like, oh my God, you're creating a bad karma. But then you have to look at the context. So I think we have to look at it from a top-down approach because each situation is unique. And from that point of view, one can give certain examples and then go from there. Jai Baba.
I think this is Jai Baba. This is Jayanti. I think the ego is a byproduct of the mind because mind creates that false self, creating an importance for itself, saying, I am great by doing ABC activities and creating that importance for that self or the body. So ego is a byproduct, and like Kama said, it is a contextual one. As long as it is benefiting somebody, and you are doing it very selflessly without having any kind of an attachment or a label which will put you into the pedestal, then I think it is okay.
So is it the ego or is it the mind?
It is the mind which is playing, and the byproduct of the mind is ego, because ego thrive on the false self, or ego thrives on the labels that the mind is creating. And so it's a mind which is always playing. It's a spinal cord. It's in the subconscious level. The mind is always playing that.
Jai Baba, as we already know, there is the divine ego, which is the real I self, the OILS, our innermost loving self. And then you have the false I self, which is the ego personality self, the unique ego personality self that each individual drop soul human being carries based on his unique sanskaras, which manifests in the form of DNA and fingerprint in the physical realm, and in terms of sanskaras, grows subtle mental in the spiritual realm. So, as Jayanti said, mind is the repository of all the sanskaras. The net cumulative effect of all the gross subtle mental sanskaras accumulated in the current life and past lives determines the unique ego personality self of the individual at that particular moment. And that ego is ever changing all the time. And this ego, which is coming from the sanskaric bank stored in the mind, covers the realized self. That is why we are dissolving the ego. Love is already latent, inherent. We don't have to think about breathing. We have to be aware of breathing. Similarly, we have to be aware of the realized self, the white movie screen while watching the movie. At the same time, we are looking at the movie of life, how the ego is manifesting in our day-to-day activities, both in our material life and spiritual life. Hey, Baba.
I think ego is different from mind. Mind, ego is the one which we use to function in this life. And the mind has got three parts: the intellectual part, where we figure out, we understand, and all that stuff. And then emotional part is there. We feeling love, feeling jealousy, feeling anger, the emotional part of it. And then the thinking part of it. Who thinks? The I think. I is the ego. I consciousness is different from mind. Jai Baba.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I mean, but I think the point that's being made is it's a creation of the mind, right? So it's sustained and created by the mind.
Subtle
Ego.
part of subtle part of me.
Hmm.
Yeah, I consciousness is different. I, me,
Yes.
mine, it's all different. But the mind is different. I'm not the mind. I may get the desire from the mind because of the stored past experiences. That's what we are calling it, sanskaras. Uh, but I is the different from mind.
Yeah.
I is mind ego, me, M-E, mind ego. I, the ego personality self, the false I self, is a derivative of the mind ego. First comes mind, which stores all the sanskaras, and the sanskaras determines the ego personality self. That is how I look at it. Yeah, Baba.
If you look at the God Speaks number 14 supplement, what is the divine theme? In the chart number 10, I think, chart number 9 or 10, 9, the ego is designated separately. Mind separately, subtle body, mental body, and physical body. Ego is separate. And then soul is there. Jai Baba.
I think it's a nice topic. So if I am ignorant, I want to get corrected. So I'm talking more. Um, the I, which is created, where is it getting created from? So there has to be, like, when the conscious starts, maybe when we are 3 years, 4 years, whatever number of years, when the conscious starts saying that I am so and so, and I am having these characteristics, I am better than somebody else, all these things are coming from where for the child, and that is getting boosted over a period, over the experiences that we are gathering. And the stem or the root is mind. And mind, based on the sanskaras, it creates all those perceptions and boosts the ego so that we can either create more sanskaras or do whatever we are doing in our materialistic life. So there has to be a root for the ego. There has to be, ego is basically thriving upon the false self. It's not on the true for many of the materialistic people. Only when you reach about the fourth plane or the third plane, it is basically having a lot of spiritual maturity to come out of the mind and come out of the manonash. So if we are in the spiritual path, if we are reading the other books of Baba, if we are in the spiritual part, there are various characters that we need to, or various variables that we need to work with or optimize with. And one of the character or the main character is mind, because from there it is stemming for our sanskaras, our ego, our karma, or whatever we are calling.
Jayanti, we are all not experts. We are learning. That is our goal. We all do mistakes, but we're not going to blame anybody for doing mistake. But we are discussing, right? But that discussion
Yeah.
itself is a knowledge for us. So don't worry about
Mm.
doing. I don't worry about making mistakes. I do mistakes all the time, but that's not the point. Whether I'm doing correctly or mistakes, but we're all learning. That is the main thing. You are learning, I'm learning, everybody is learning by exercising our mind. And by exercising, we go from ignorance to knowledge. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Who said that? Kama, did you say that? Jai Baba.
I didn't hear that. What was that?
Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityoma Amritam
Yes.
Gamaya. Who said that? You said that?
I don't know, but I know we're all playing a ball game. That much I'm sure.
No, but you're missing the question. So, in all the language and hygiene fundas, let's respond to Jayanti as well. So, what sustains? What is creating this?
I'm sorry, what is the question, Kama,
No,
Karthik?
no. Respond to what Jayanti is saying. So, what is actually the fabric, or what? How does the ego get erected?
Highness is there. That is the consciousness, which is ignorant. As we gain, let's say we are in 9 years old, as with Jayanti said, when we are a child, we are totally ignorant. But I am there, right? And as we are growing now, we are all working and grown up, married, whatever. We are no way. Our mind is totally different from when I was 9 years old. But I am the same thing. At 9 years old, I felt I am. Now also I'm feeling I am. But the data I'm using is different now. I was not able to speak this intelligently when I was 9 years old. My interests were different. Everything is different. My mind was different. My energy levels were different. My physical body was different. Not even a single cell that I have in my body was there is there now. When I was 7 years old, my physical body is different. My energy level is different. My mental body is different. But the I consciousness is there. I am is still there. So yeah, that is my response to
So
JMT.
does that mean
Yeah.
the 7-year kid doesn't have an ego?
They have ego, but different
Yeah.
kind of ego, right? It's a
Yeah.
different kind of ego.
So the ego has to come from somewhere, and that
Yeah.
I conscious has to stay somewhere. And as the maturity comes in, the ego slowly dissolves or changes or goes and catches something else to create that importance for that I at that particular time period. Like my child, the third year or fourth year, when he was like just growing up, he still fantasizes on the fancy cars. So he used to tell me, Amma, I'll become your driver, so that like you buy fancy cars and I will drive you around to office and come back, and that's what I want to become. 4 years he changed it to something else. 5 years he changed it to become a superman, and 6 years he became something else. So every time there was an ego attached because of his desire. And once he went to school, he started learning something else. And then his aspirations or ambition is like, kept on changing, from a footballer to a basketballer to something else and something else. That is what us also. So for me, the ego has to come from some other place. It's not originating on its own. It is not starting initially also. But the mind, even for a small child, when the child was born, there is mind. May not be able to express it, but the child cries and get things done, and there is an ego even for that child who doesn't know how to speak, till like 2 year 2 months 3 months, whatever. So there has to be some other wireframe for the ego to operate, and there has to be some other messenger that feeds the ego.
So,
And
Jen,
who is that messenger?
I
No,
can
I
answer.
totally agree with you, Jayanti. It is there. You know what is the last thing that before get God realization, what God flicks it off before we get the God realization? The last sanskara that needs to be taken out. It is the ego. T-1, I am Ravi or I am Jayanti. T0, Baba flicks that ego. T+1, I am God. That I consciousness was there when stone was there, and because of I am stone, we are collecting the sanskaras. And the animal thinks I am the animal. And now we are thinking I am the human being. That ego is that I am this body. Now I am thinking I am this body, I am this mind. See, that is the ego, I consciousness. And that will be there till the sixth plane, last step. Sixth plane of consciousness. I'm not disagreeing with you, Jayanti. It is there. It will be there. I don't think we need to worry about it. Only thing we have to worry about it is it helping us in our spiritual progress or not? Or is it impeding our progress? That is the problem. If we don't make use of our ego properly, it becomes a big hurdle for us. That is the thing. Jai Baba.
I think you're still
Is there a,
skirting her question.
is there a
Her
difference
question.
between ego and
Go
I
ahead, Kama.
consciousness? Is
I
there a
think
difference
Karthik was
between?
trying to say something.
I consciousness
I,
is ego. I consciousness is ego.
okay.
So what I was saying, Jayanti, was I think your question is still being skirted. Do you agree?
Yeah. Let's listen to Karthik so that, sorry, Ashok, so that we'll see
Sure,
whether there's
go
a
ahead.
different perspective. But I do like that underlining concept what Dr. Ravi was saying that we it will be there, let it be there as whatever form, shape it has to be there, and let it travel with us up to the last step of the sixth plane, and then it will go on its own, depending upon how fast or how good we are progressing.
So, if I may just say a few words to address the discussion. So, it's like the photograph or the impressions, if you can. Uh, I'm using a photograph as an analogy, but the shadow of our sanskaras are stored in the mind. That is all known, I think, because it's all, I think, mentioned in other places also in the discourses. So, and the cumulative record is maintained in the mind, whether it's good or bad. I mean, good, bad, or ugly, or whatever. So, in my accountant's mind, I think of debit and credit, or plus and minus, or 0 and 1. But and uh, and and we can say that it creates a sanskaric balance sheet. When I say balance sheet, means the good and the bad sanskaras all maintained in the balance sheet. So there is a place where the impressions are recorded and kept and stored, and I think that place is the mind. If I Does that answer your question, Jayati?
So
Yeah, yeah.
that's the sanskaras. So is ego also in the mind? Is her
Yeah.
question, or
Ego,
is it a
ego,
standalone? Yeah,
ego is what creates the sanskaras, right?
correct. Agreed.
Exactly.
And
Attitude
sanskaras
of ego.
are stored in the mind.
Yes. So therefore, the ego is in the mind, or is the place for the ego is
No,
in the mind.
the
Simple. I mean,
Ashok,
that's
the
very simple logic.
attitude of the attitude of the ego makes the whether you create sanskaras or not create the sanskaras. Okay, if I feel I am the one who made this chicken curry, okay, I create sanskaras. Okay, now I make the same chicken curry and say it's all Baba who is doing this with a sincere feeling. If I say that, I don't create any sanskaras, any binding there. I still make the curry with my ego. I have to figure out what are the ingredients I have to put to make the curry. But I feel sincerely in my heart, it is the Baba who is doing through me. And then once the curry is done, when we serve, if the people say, oh, it's great or it's very bad, you give that result to Baba, then you are not creating any sanskaras. So, I consciousness is there. Your result, you are giving it away. The attitude of yourself is makes the sanskaras or not. Jai Baba.
Okay, so Jayanti, any thoughts in closing?
It still lingers, but I don't have any questions.
No, so I think the key also is what Ravi said about chart 10 in God Speaks, which is mind and ego are separate. So I have not noticed that, but that's another input that we need to process in understanding this. But that's, as I said, inconclusive is what I would say.
Yeah, I'll go through, I'll do the homework and come back again.
Sure. Okay, so let's continue. The dilemma. It is therefore most necessary for the aspirant to keep free from the idea, I do this and I do that. This does not mean that the aspirant is to avoid all activity through fear of developing this form of the ego. He may have to take to the life of action to wear out the ego he has already developed. Thus, he is caught up in a dilemma. If he stays inactive, he does nothing to break through the prison of his ego life. And if he takes to a life of action, he is faced with the possibility of his ego being transferred to these new acts. This is an interesting twist. I continue. Treading path like walking on edge of the sword. For spiritual advancement, the aspirant has to avoid these two extremes and yet carry on a life of creative action. Treading the spiritual path is not like riding a saddled horse, but like walking on the sharp edge of a sword. Once a rider is on horseback, he is practically at rest, sitting with more or less ease and requiring very little effort or attention to proceed. Treading the spiritual path, however, requires utmost attention and carefulness since the path affords no halting places or room for expansion of the ego life. He who enters the path can neither remain where he is nor can he afford to lose his balance. He is thus like one who attempts to walk on the sharp edge of a sword. So the formula is not to slip into inaction for the fear of the ego. But again, it goes back to, like Kama said a few minutes earlier, the right understanding of action and doing the right action, and also understanding and applying that in real life, right? Everything from what we've learned in discourses earlier: violence, non-violence, action, right action, right? Okay. Now we get to constructing new ego subservient to master. To avoid inaction on the one hand and pride of action on the other, it is necessary for the aspirant. Singapore passenger announcements, please go mute.
Give me a minute. Sorry.
Sure,
My
sure,
mistake.
no problem.
Sorry.
No problem.
Platform is busy with the vendors.
Oh, he jumped off. Okay, I was just muting him. Yeah, I'll go back. I'll read again. To avoid inaction on the one hand and pride of action on the other, it is necessary for the aspirant to construct in the following manner a provisional and working ego that will be entirely subservient to the master. Before beginning anything, the aspirant thinks that it is not he who is doing, but the master who is getting it done through him. After doing the task, he does not tarry to claim the results of action or enjoy them, but becomes free of them by offering them to the master. By training his mind in this spirit, he succeeds in creating a new ego, which, though only provisional and working, is amply able to become a source of confidence, feeling, enthusiasm, and go that true action must express. This new ego is spiritually harmless since it derives its life and being from the Master who represents infinity. And when the time comes, it can be thrown away like a garment. So I think this is an important coverage for professional working ego. And I think what I'm taking away is the importance of the use of the word provisional, right? Provisional because, of course, it's a long time to provision it for because it's still you get to the seventh plane and get rid of it. But till that time, it is an action, and that's the provisional aspect of it. And then the working is it allows you to perform action and not slip into inaction like it was described, right? So I continue. There are thus two types of ego: one that can only add to the limitations of the soul, and the other that helps it toward emancipation. The passage from the limiting ego of the worldly to the egolessness of the infinite life lies through the construction of a provisional ego generated by wholehearted allegiance to the master. The construction of a new ego entirely subservient to the master is indispensable to the dynamics of spiritual advancement. sudden transition to egoless life, impossible. The aspirant has been accustomed to derive zest in life from his limited ego, and an immediate transition from the life of egoistic action to that of egoless action is impossible on one's own and also not advisable. If the aspirant were immediately required to avoid all forms of ego consciousness, he would have to revert to a state of negative passivity without any joy of expression. Or he would have to seek expression through activity that is merely automatic, like that of a lifeless machine, and therefore he could not derive any sense of fulfillment. The real problem is that the aspirant has to abandon his life of the limited ego and enter into the limitlessness of the egoless life without lapsing into a coma, where there would be an ebbing of all life. Such a coma might give temporary relief from the limitation of the ego life, but it cannot initiate the aspirant into the infinity of egoless activity. All right, continue. Spiritual advancement, usually gradual. This is the reason why, in most cases, spiritual advancement has to be very gradual and often takes several lives. Where a person seems to have taken long strides in his spiritual advancement, he has merely recapitulated the advancement already secured in previous lives, or there has been special intervention by a Sadguru. In normal cases, the advancement of the aspirant has to be gradual. The distance between the limited life of the ego and the limitlessness of the egoless life has to be covered by gradual stages of ego transformation, so that egoism is replaced by humility, surging desires are replaced by steadily growing contentment, and selfishness is replaced by selfless love.
I think Karthik, this paragraph would help us to have some discussion. I think every topic in this chapter is very, very powerful. I don't mind reading every day for a few days. Read again every day. If we read it, the contents will be embedded in our system, because these are very, very useful for us for our spiritual journey. So here, if you want to get the spiritual advancement, we need to make our ego provisional and change it put some effort to change it such that whatever we do, our master will be happy. Baba would be happy what we are doing, and that will help us to progress in the spiritual path. Because usually in other times is different, but now we are in such a powerful time, the avataric period. It's wise for us to make use of this period. During this, we have another 50 more years to grab this power, whether use it or lose it. Once this power goes away, then we have to drag for many more larger time to get over this struggle. That's what I want to comment. And Jai Baba.
Okay, so I have a question. So I wanted to reread this coma part because I didn't understand it, or if somebody can explain it, that'll be great. Shall I just reread this part?
Yes.
Okay. The real problem is that the aspirant has to abandon his life of the limited ego and enter into the limitlessness of the ego life without lapsing into a coma, where there would be an
Egoless
ebbing
life.
of all life.
Egoless life.
Egoless life. Egoless life. Without lapsing into a coma where there would be an ebbing of all life. So, what does he mean by this coma?
See,
So, I
how were we before coming into Baba's fold? We are totally depending on, even though we are praying now and then, but that prayer is not really serious because we are totally depend on our own intellect, right? We are figuring out we are leading our life depending totally on our intellect. Now that we came into the fold of Baba, we are depending on him. So to please him, we have to change our old ways into spiritual way. That is the change we are making. So we feel, because old sanskaras are still there, by changing we think we are sacrificing, or what is that, we feel, oh, we are changing, we feel so pity on us. But pretty soon, if we go on leading this egoless life, it becomes a normal for us. This ego is subservient to what Baba likes. Our ego becomes, Baba becomes our center, and whatever he likes, that's what we do. That is what, in my opinion, being coma to our own old self. That's what I mean. Jai Baba.
Okay, Baba. The way I look at it is that it's like, I think the second line in that paragraph, or the second sentence, if the aspirant were immediately required to avoid all forms of ego consciousness, he would have to revert to a state of negative passivity without any joy of expression. So Baba is saying, don't become mechanical. Don't do it out of a sense of duty. It's like telling the kid, don't put your finger on the fire. That is one order. But if you explain the concept behind why the fire harms you, to understanding the reasoning behind it. It's like programming something, it's like programming a robot to do something, because a robot doesn't have any emotional intelligence. Today artificial intelligence is trying to become better and better, you know. So here he says that, or he would have to seek expression through activity that is merely automatic, like that of a machine, what do you say? Um, Sorry, I just lost the page. Yeah, he's saying here like that of a lifeless machine, and therefore he could not derive any sense of fulfillment. The real problem is that the aspirant has to abandon his life of the limited ego, which is very self-explanatory. See, once you realize that, hey, you know what, I've been a very egoistic person, I was not very spiritual, like the Western mind, which only thinks, the Abrahamic religion, that this is the only life, this is the only body, there is no God, there is no reincarnation. That is a form of ignorance. Okay. So suddenly you get, I know people who have woken up because they went through some personal tragedy, where they suddenly woke up to the fact that, all those concepts I had about life, that, that this is the only life and I'm going to lead it the way I want it. And there are no spiritual laws and so on. And suddenly, you start looking at the other side and you start reading about it. So it's not important, or I should say, what Baba is saying out here is, don't become mechanical. Don't do anything out of a sense of duty. You have to be spontaneous. You have to do it with love. And this is where the literature helps. How do you do something with love? You can't do anything on blind faith. Even Buddha said that whatever I tell you, don't believe whatever I say. You have to experience it. I think the same thing Baba is telling in a very subliminal way. You have to know what you're doing. And when you're saying, I want to do it with love, don't do it because Baba said it. Oh, it's your duty to love me. No. When Baba says, love me, remember me, he's actually pointing out to our own self. The Parvartikar prayer is not, I am in the firmament, I am in the depths. Baba could have made that prayer like that. But he said, you are in the firmament, you are in the depths. So I subliminally look at it as your innermost loving self is in the firmament and in the depths because we are the drop soul self. He was also a drop soul self who won the lottery and became the avatar. So the real problem is that the aspirant has to abandon its life of the limited ego and enter into the limitlessness of the egoless life. Now, the limitlessness of the egoless life is a grace of Baba without lapsing into a coma. This is just a metaphor. Then don't do things mechanically, you know. Like for example, our education system is like rote learning. I'm sorry, I come from that environment, ROTE, and I didn't know till I started studying for entrance exams that you need to understand concepts. So I think this is a metaphor. Don't be like a student who is doing rote learning. Try to understand the concepts behind it and try to do it with love, where there would be an ebbing of our life. If you start becoming mechanical, most people, the 80-20 rule of life, 80% people are incompetent in their jobs, both in the material life and spiritual life, not because they are incompetent, they have not found their true calling in life. And I have been a victim of that, you know, because I've been searching, we got to do things for others. We didn't find out what is it that I love doing. And this is what parents are supposed to awaken in their kids. Yes, be practical, but try to awaken the potential of the kid, So such a coma might give temporary relief from the limitation of the ego life. Suddenly guy says like, oh, this guy who was very, angry man, now he's very not angry anymore. But actually he is suppressing his anger inside him. And out of a sense of duty, he's behaving like a nice guy. But if he has not resolved his anger, then he's living in a cocoon, so but it cannot initiate the aspirant into the infinity of egoless activity. So I think this is a very important sentence, that we need to understand every action that we are doing. Don't do it mechanically. Do it with complete self-awareness. Do it with all the conceptual understanding. Okay, Bob.
If I may just add what you said. So we do it from the bottom of our heart and do it with the pure sense of doing it because you want to do it and not just mechanical. That's a very good takeaway. So we do it from the purity and from the bottom of our heart. That be a summary of that.
Yes, absolutely right. You have to do everything with sincerity, with dedication, with passion, with intensity, so that it becomes, you can see whether this person is just doing it out of sense of duty, which is what most people are going about their jobs, the so-called rat race, because you're stuck in this rat race. And that is a form of being in a coma, frankly, unfortunately. But one has to go through it, because otherwise you won't break on through to the other side, like the Doors song, Aldous Huxley. So yes, one has to go through this duality of illusion. We have to go through the ups and downs on life with a lot of ignorance. But now we have Baba helping us. He's given us a framework. He has shown us the laws of nature. And now we have to put in that intense effort, infinite patience that Baba talks about. So you're right, okay, Baba.
Break on to the other side. The first song that I love, which Kama also loves. Okay. Finally, we hit common ground, Kama. Okay, anyway, so we are out of time for our session today. So we'll wrap up here. That's a good song, by the way, guys. Just check it out. Doors, Break On to the Other Side. Um, I had one announcement to make before we go. We are trying to get together with the group that's working on the Mehrabad channel and Ward Parks. So we're having a chat with them at 3 p.m. today. So whoever is free amongst you, please join us. I will send a link on Telegram so that we can talk to Naman and see what they have as their plans and try to help and see if we can converge and join forces. Basically, they're also on a journey to make Baba literature and Baba learning available to more people, and that's what we are trying as well. So, Kamas facilitated a meeting, so feel free to join whoever is free, so that you can be an advocate of what we're doing on the platform, and then we'll see where it goes.
That's a good announcement. I think I've attended one or two of the sessions, and I think if we can join hands, yes, that's good.
Yeah, I've attended. I mean, I've heard all the videos, but I've not attended all the question answer sessions. I think it's very useful to converge these kind of efforts and get together. So let's see what happens. With that, I wrap up. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Any other passing thoughts before we close? I take that to be a no. Enjoy your Saturday and look forward to seeing you all on Sunday. Jai Baba.
I'm going to miss tomorrow, Karthik.
Jay Baba.
Jai Baba.
Night out on the city, huh? Ravi, you're
Jai
getting naughty.
Baba.
Yeah. Going. Yeah.